Tom, I thought we'd begin with this. A little Pierre Poilievre first.
This is, by far, the biggest hit Canada's diplomatic reputation has ever taken in its history. And it happened under Justin Trudeau's watch.
The work of this House is above any of us. Therefore, I must step down as your Speaker. I reiterate my profound regret for my error in recognizing an individual in the House during the joint address to Parliament of President Zelensky. That public recognition has caused pain to individuals and communities, including the Jewish community in Canada and around the world, in addition to survivors of Nazi atrocities in Poland, among other nations. I accept full responsibility for my actions. My resignation is effective at the end of the sitting day tomorrow, Wednesday, September 27th, to allow preparations for the election of a new Speaker. Until that time, the Deputy Speakers will chair the House proceedings.
Anthony Rota doing what many thought he should do, what many expected he would do. This is just earlier, actually this afternoon, and before that, of course, Pierre Poilievre getting on board. And actually interesting, Tom, the last of the major leaders, party leaders, to suggest he actually resign. First of all, he wanted Justin Trudeau to resign, but that's pretty much par for the course. So what do you think of where we are right now?
Well, we had talked about this yesterday when I was talking about it on the air, and I have to tell you that I was not surprised. I knew he had to resign. There was obviously a little bit of discussion and negotiation to be had. I think it would have been much cleaner if he had done it earlier. And I just wrote a piece for CTV saying, look, let's not forget the fact that this guy was otherwise, other than this incredible mistake, he was a very good speaker. He was respected on all sides. He had held Parliament together through this is his second minority government. It's a very tough job. And he's so respected for, he's a listener. He knows how to compose with competing points of view. He's been one of those folks. But what he did was so unbelievable. And I'm still listening to Poilievre trying to somehow find any angle he can think of to hang any part of this on Justin Trudeau. Now, since we do this regularly for the past 5 years, I'm never shy about taking a poke at the Liberals when I think they're wrong. But here I'm just going to say very simply that the rules of Parliament could not be clearer. Anybody who's ever sat in the Parliament will tell you the same thing. The only person who had the prerogative to put somebody in that chair was Anthony Rota. You could tell that he was the one who wrote his own text, because anybody from international affairs or anywhere else in government would have cleaned it up and said, no, we're not going to congratulate somebody for fighting against the Russians in the Second World War, because that would have made them a Nazi, because they were the ones fighting the Russians. The Russians were our allies as part of the Soviet Union. So across the board, it is the most embarrassing thing. Poilievre is right on that. But there's no way for him to hang this on Justin Trudeau. He's saying that, it's because he's the head of government. He should have somehow known what Anthony Rota had decided on his own, to introduce a 98-year-old man from his riding, trying to do the right thing as a member of Parliament, and forgetting that it wasn't about him that day. It was about the visit of Zelensky, and somehow he decided to make this incredible boneheaded move, and he's paid for it with his job after having done an otherwise excellent bit of work doing it.
But does Pierre Poilievre, in my opinion, he makes a valid point that the security level should have been way higher when you have a visit of that. Like that, you couldn't have a more targeted person in the House of Commons on that day. Should it not have been double checked for absolutely every single person coming in?
The rules of Parliament couldn't be clearer. It's almost as if he was the Baron of Parliament. The Speaker runs the show. It's his place. He is in charge of everything. Yes, everybody else coming in would be checked, but not somebody being brought in by the Speaker himself. They might want to change that for the future.
I would think so.
I will just, to your point.
There's no way to hang any of this on Trudeau. It's just being made up purely and simply by Poilievre. He's trying to find any angle. They were even sending in Andrew Scheer yesterday to try to muddy the water, saying, he has this overarching role to look at security and all this stuff. Look, I can tell you that Scheer did not have the control of Parliament that Anthony Rota did, and I saw it firsthand. So I have nothing but contempt for the way that the Conservatives have been trying to play this angle. It's not fair, it's not true, but it's pure petty politics. So let them hang with it, because if that's the way they want to try to put themselves out to the voting public, good luck to them in the next election.
You said something that kind of caught my notice here just a second ago, this idea that if Anthony Rota wrote this on his own and nobody wrote it for him, what we've all thought to ourselves was, well, let's say a junior, assistant in his office would have written this without much of a knowledge of history, then you could have understood how no one bothered to check. But if he wrote this on his own, Tom, I mean, he would know what happened in the Second World War. He would know
You'd hope
that Ukraine fought against Russia, but on the side of the Germans, not on the side of the Allies. I mean, that speaks even more to what kind of a boneheaded move this was.
Well, you would have thought that he realized it as he was reading it if he hadn't read it before, but he's also the type of guy who prepares well in advance. And to put it mildly, there were over 320 members of Parliament who stood up not once,
to applaud,
but twice,
yeah.
To applaud. And I did speak to one member of, well, actually a cabinet member, and, just sort of scratching my head saying, really? And that person said to me, look, as I was standing, I was sort of going, the fight against Russia? Hold on, what's wrong with this? But they stood up and applauded because that's what everybody else was doing. So you weren't going to be the only one scratching your head and saying, come on, what's going on? I loved the Bloc Québécois on this today. It was so fabulous to see them go. It's almost as if they weren't there and they hadn't stood up to applaud as well. This just in, the Bloc Québécois were there and they all stood up to applaud the Nazi. Just to make that clear.
Tom, can I ask for your take on Karina Gould, a Liberal MP, asking that the recognition be struck from the record, and how there's been a lot of reaction to that? I took it as that she does not want this man to be recognized, but people are taking it as trying to erase that this mistake ever happened.
Well, that almost sounds like we were in 1823 and not in 2023. Let's just erase this. Believe it or not, there's a million tapes out there, recordings of this out there, and everybody who wants to see it will be able to see it forever and ever, amen, on YouTube or whatever its equivalent's going to be in years from now. But I think what they're trying to say is that in the formal record of the House of Commons, this is a way of trying to expunge it from that formal record, what we call Hansard, and simply removing it. I do believe I remember one similar case, well, not similar because not nearly as grave, but one case in the past where something was removed for some reason that it was so pernicious. So I think that here you could probably do the same thing. I wouldn't have any objection to it, but of course, it doesn't change the fact that it actually happened, and everybody knows that it happened, and anybody wants to see it. Like, maybe Vladimir Putin, who's sitting there grinning right now saying, I told you this was all about fighting Nazis.
So, Tom, is this over? Resignation's done? Do we move on, or is this going to linger?
Well, it's going to remain one of those points that the Conservatives try to scratch away at, trying to somehow tag it on to Trudeau, and it's not true. Anybody who's ever been in Parliament, anyone who's ever been elected to Parliament in Ottawa, and I was elected to Parliament 4 times, knows that it's like so forbidden for anybody other than the Speaker to stand up and even, you're making a speech or you're talking, you say, well, this group is here from my riding in the galleries. You're going to get called out. You'll get put in the penalty box because this is the exclusive purview and prerogative of the Speaker, full point. Maybe some of that stuff's going to have to be revisited. And by the way, we're going to go through a lot. There's nothing preordained about who's going to go into that chair. There are some people who are already, assistant speakers and so forth. It's going to be fun to watch because it's a minority parliament. Usually the governing party is able to say, this is the person who's going in. There are going to be a lot of people running for this job, and it's going to be an open vote. And by the way, it's a secret ballot. So nothing's been decided in advance who's actually going to replace Anthony Rota. Maybe that was one of the reasons that Trudeau took so long, coming out and saying this guy's got to go. But I honestly admire the forbearance of Trudeau in this. Like, I can tell you, for having talked to somebody who was in his cabinet, that they were so irate when this thing broke. Look, they had a perfect visit. You work in a big ministry like, Mélanie Joly, International Affairs, all in charge. You have this one visit. Everything is perfect. Even the weather cooperates. It's one of those perfect end of summer days in Ottawa. The speech was Churchillian. Everybody was moved. And then this happens. Oh. And that's what I think is so unforgivable. It's that Anthony Rota lost it in the lights. He started going, wow, this is one of the biggest moments here. Maybe I'll talk about somebody from my riding. And that's why it wasn't vetted. That's why nobody knew about it, because he decided to do it.
All right, I want to leave this behind. We'll give you a little minute here to just talk about, we used this as our question of the day earlier on. So the mayor of Laval stands up. He's handed a $20 million check by the provincial government and basically goes to town on the two ministers who were there with him, saying, yeah, great, thanks for being here, but this is nowhere near enough money. And since it didn't work when I try to negotiate behind closed doors, I'm going to come out in public and basically say I am really disappointed with this government. Did he do the right thing or the wrong thing?
The total wrong thing. Because first of all, the amounts involved are humongous. And second of all, there is a very large doghouse that will be kept near the offices of Francois Legault from now on. And it has the name of the mayor of Laval on it. And basically, this guy's going to need everything from help with public transit to his roads to everything else. And guess what? Human beings get beat up easily like that, get a cheap shot thrown at them. And then other human beings get to make decisions or not. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that there's going to be an absolute plan to say no to everything, but there might be times when people around the go will just say, put this one at the bottom of the pile. So
no, Tom, say it ain't so.
You had your moment of fame by going after the government. Well, watch what happens next. Oh, yeah, they're human beings. And when they work hard and they try to come up with money because, crime is on the increase and Laval's no different. Actually, Laval's got a pretty tough situation to go after them like that. After that, that's a lot of money that was being put on the table. So I think it was ungracious on their part, and I think they're going to pay a price for it. No question in my mind.
By the way, our listeners, for the most part, said, way to go. He's a hero for doing what he did. Just thought I'd share that with you. There you go. Not politically, just in terms of citizens, I guess, there. Tom Mulcair. Tom, thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Take good care.